And so the outcome differences that we saw are actually quite striking in the study. When we went into this study, logically we expected from a safety standpoint that Ceftolozane Tazobactam was going to prove to be better, because we know that cephalosporins are generally very well tolerated, and we also know that drugs like the polymixins and aminoglycosides come with a significant toxicity risk. And so that was the main thing that we expected to find, and we did. We basically found that it was about a 30% difference in the rates of acute kidney injury in patients who got one of those older therapies compared to Ceftolozane Tazobactam. And to kind of put that into perspective, basically the number needed to harm to cause that adverse event ends up being 4 if you do the math. So if you give 4 patients a polymixin instead of Ceftolozane Tazobactam, you're going to give one of them a toxic event from that standpoint. So that's what we expected to see. What was interesting is that in addition to that, we also found that clinical cure was actually about 20% better, and it was statistically significant as well with Ceftolozane Tazobactam in our study. So in addition to just being safer, it also improved the clinical outcomes in our patients as well. As I suggested before, we also did look at mortality, but we didn't see any difference between the two groups, but that's not surprising. We were well underpowered to really look at that outcome. That wasn't the primary focus of our study. Yeah, so the future research, it's actually an exciting time for the agent. So in addition to our data, which is really looking at here's where patients are currently being treated for these infections, or where it's currently being used in clinical practice, they actually just finished a actual randomized controlled trial in nosocomial pneumonia as well. So again, a kind of the opposite of our study, whereas ours is this is what's actually happening on the ground. This was a very well-performed controlled trial in patients who had ventilated pneumonia. And so those high-level results have been publicly announced that suggested that it did well, but we haven't really seen any of those data yet. So I think the future research, in addition to more data like our set that we're seeing here, is getting the results of the randomized controlled trial for that disease state as well.